long before they became legends. Mufasa and the prince who would come to be known as Scar became brothers.
I would like to start with you, Barry. The Lion King has so many similarities with Hamlet. Did you also think of Mufasa as a kind of Shakespearean tale?
I did, but more in the sense that the DNA, like you said, of the original Lion King is kind of rooted in Hamlet. So the characters kind of come to you Shakespearean. You don't really have to sort of create that connection. And it was really cool to really know that there was that level of deepness of subtext to what was happening between the characters. It kind of gave us the confidence to lean in and try to create even more of this sort of like messy like undercurrent to the family relationships in the film.
It's time I tell you a story. A story of a cub, not much bigger than you.
So just to be clear, we're not in this story?
There's a lot of stories with all of us. Tell one of those.
Joy, a question for you. The film is told in flashbacks with Rafiki telling the story while Timon and Pumbaa throwing a joke or two in between. How difficult was it for you as an editor to find the narrative rhythm and the right balance between seriousness and silliness?
You know, the scenes that really came together in the beginning, I would say, are the cave cutaways with Rafiki and Kiara and Timon and Pumbaa. And so they basically were like the foundation of the film, and they allowed us to jump through time, you know, with Mufasa, but also come back to these familiar characters, you know, and kind of integrate the audience in both the past and the present.
I think also too, people think that we're these very serious kind of like filmmakers who don't laugh based on the previous work. But we actually have a lot of fun making these things, and so those scenes kind of just like they fell into place.
Yeah, and we still laugh at them to this day.
I know,
you know?
I know. We shouldn't say that a lot, though.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Speaking of a previous movie, I rewatched Moonlight a few days ago, listening to Barry's audio commentary. There you talk about not spelling out that Mahershala Ali's character is gone. You called it a gut decision that was the right call. Mm-hmm. What was a gut decision on this film that you feel very good about now?
Oh, I mean, making the film, for one, you know, this wasn't an obvious choice for us to do. And there are things similar to that choice in Moonlight. It's kind of this difference between showing versus telling. I could tell you a few of those things, but that would spoil the rest of the movie for you. So I shan't. But yeah, it was. I think it's so funny you mentioned the commentary on that film. I haven't listened to it in a while, but it is cool to know that we entered this movie with the sort of like the same confidence that we gained from those experiences.
Any gut decision you would like to share, Joy, or would that also go into spoiler territory?
No, I think, you know, oftentimes when we do projects, Barry and I think the reason why we work so well together is I can anticipate what his instincts are based on how him and James shoot the footage. And so for me, every scene that I approach, I am trying to listen to my gut instincts and try to hear and see what Barry's trying to say with these different scenes. And I think throughout the film, there are a lot of good gut choices that we made, and definitely grounds the character in ways that they're super approachable.
One last thing about that audio commentary, then I will shut up about it. Barry compared shooting Moonlight to chopping wood. So what was it like working on this? Did it feel more like sculpting wood because it was easier to go back and redefine things?
No. I think to me the chopping wood is an analogy because it's cold. You need to build a fire to heat yourself and to cook. And the only way to do that is to chop wood. Like, you have to do that in order to survive. I think in filmmaking, you have to be capturing images, in order to be creating art. This was the same way. Yeah. If anything, this was more a straightforward process of chopping wood, because there is a certain amount of shots that you have to deliver on a certain schedule in order for the film to be finished on time. Mm-hmm. So there's something very a gridded process sort of aspect to making this film that I think that analogy is very appropriate for. Within that, you still want to be sculpting. You still want to be creating art, It's not just chopping wood for the sake of it. You're trying to find a texture, a warmth, a tone to that wood as well.
Yeah. There's a necessity to it. Yeah. And I feel like Moonlight was like chopping maybe a small little forest, and this is acres and acres of wood that we had to keep on chopping.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking on that, one could also see the editor as a sculptor working with all the chopped wood that the director assembles. How was this sculpting process different compared to other films now?
This one, I feel like a lot of times in live action, like I have the actors, I have the images, I have their voices, I have all of the stuff that I get to work with. Here, we had to build everything from the ground up. Like, when you look at the movie and you hear the movie, every single sound in that movie had to be created. In the same way with the image, everything from the blade of grass to the particulates in the air to the way the sun shines through the clouds, all of that had to be created. All of those are like active decisions. And so for here, we started with the voices, then we, built on that with the animation, and then finally got to the comp renders where all the layers and the environments came to be. But yeah, it was bit by bit.
Hello, what's your name?
Mufasa.
I told you to wait for me. We can't just leave him here. Rules are rules, Tucker. The king will never accept a stray.
I'm not a stray. I'm just lost.
One of the main criticism of the 2019 film was the limitation of the animals' facial expressions. If we look at Mufasa now, there's an improvement in that respect. Was that one of the goals?
It was one of the goals to have the film be really expressive. I think with this technology, it's so new. The 2019 film was the first time many of these animals, these models were created. And I think when you do that, you just have to get the creation right. You have to get the foundation of it. This is how they move. These are the muscles in their faces. I would say with this film, we've begun to manipulate those muscles to a greater degree. And maybe potentially on the previous film, which I did not work on, there was a limitation on how much manipulation they felt they could do. They had to get people accustomed to seeing the animals with this kind of technology. And now we stand on their shoulders and we get to take it just a bit farther.
What was the best advice given to you before you jumped into this project for the both of you?
It's actually interesting. You mentioned the 2019 film. I spoke to Jon Favreau, about this whole process before I took on the project. Before I said yes to Disney, I said, I need to speak to this guy. And I talked to him, and he said the best thing to do was to get to a point where the technology didn't matter, where I could just sort of like ignore the tech completely and just tell the story I wanted to tell with the visual grammar that I wanted to apply to it. And I think that was by far the best advice anybody could have given me. And it was the most potent because it came directly from him.
I think for me, I talked to the editor who worked on here, Adam. He worked on the 2019 film, and he said, if you have a good, strong team, he's like, you can do it. And it was true. Like my team, my assistant editors were essential in this process, and we had to learn a lot of new technology to actually wrap our heads or brains around the process. But once we did learn the process, it became like a necessity for us to not only understand the technology, but apply it in a way that it's efficient. And so to really be efficient, you have to understand the process. And having a good team was essential on this, and it definitely helped.
And as a last question, this being a prequel to a Disney classic, what other prequel would you like to see?
You first.
Me?
Yeah.
Gosh, that's tough. I don't know. You go.
It is tough.
Yeah.
I'm so. It's lovely speaking to you. I've spoken to so many people about so many things involving this film in the last 7 days.
You know what?
What?
I would love a prequel to Mary Poppins. Like, how did she become Mary Poppins?
I'll take that. Is that a Disney film?
Yeah.
Mary Poppins. There it is.